Welcome to Massive Beers. My name is Matt. We do the beer stuff here, and recently we've been chomping at the bit to re-review a bunch of beers. And this one I haven't done in quite some time. Gulden Draak. One of my favorite all-time old school Belgian beers. Yeah, they call it a dark red triple ale. I don't know, there's something about it that makes me think more like quality on it, but we'll get to that. Gulden Draak has been top of mind for me for the past year or so. They actually came out with a Gulden Draak smoked, and I've been trying to track it down. I haven't been able to find it, and I actually reached out to somebody, and I was like, hey, can I get a bottle of this in the States? And they're like, actually, it's only in kegs right now. It's not even in bottles, yada, yada, yada. Shortly after that conversation, I saw this, and I'm like, you know what? I gotta go back to the old school. So we're gonna do it. We're gonna see what's what. It's probably one of the beers I reviewed early on in my beer reviewing, dare we say, career. I don't know how long ago it was, but it was a long time. So we're gonna dive back into it. It's a classic, the authentic dark red triple ale. Comes in at 10.5%. They call this high fermentation. Secondary fermentation contains 3 times more malt than lager. I don't know if that's quantifiable or accurate in any form or fashion, but we'll let them. We'll give them a pass. It says this beer is named in honor of the dragon perched atop the belfry in Ghent, Belgium, a symbol of power and independence. Brewed and bottled Van Steenberg, Belgium. Let's see. I think that's all we got going on here. I don't know if I get a bottling date on here. Probably not. It might actually be somewhere else, but we'll see what's what. So we're going to dive into this sucker. Let's see where we're going. So this is going to be part of the old Massive Beer Review Classics, because this be a classic. I can't tell you the last time I had this beer. I reviewed variants of this not super long ago compared to when I originally reviewed this, but it's been forever. I can't tell you. I mean, it's probably been 8 years since I've had this beer, maybe. Label-wise, I've always really did enjoy the way they kind of laid out this label, because it has this kind of wrap on it, and it's not so much, you think of Belgian beers, you think of like Trappist-esque kind of beers. The whole kind of plastic wrapped kind of thing doesn't make sense, but something about this white bottle has always kind of dug on me. I believe it was not a wrap for quite some time. It was something a bit different, maybe like the way they do the painted coated bottles, but I still kind of dig it. I like that weird kind of, the logo, the boaty kind of looking dragony thing that we talked about in Ghent. Anyway, yeah, I mean, it comes off very much quality for me. It has a little bit of soft murkiness to it, but it's very, very clear. It almost has like a champagne-y kind of carbonation to it. On camera, it's probably going to look way darker than what it looks like to me, but it has this awesome 2 fingers ahead, because I can't pour beers properly, of this super creamy fluffiness. It looks all the part of a nice Belgian / dark double E. Doesn't look like a triple, let's put it that way. Let's even get a nose. Get a little bit of mustiness on this, honestly. It could be just their yeast phenolic on this. I don't remember getting that little bit of mustiness on this, but I have this little bit of soft mustiness, so it might have a little bit of age on it. I highly doubt it. Let's see. Where I get the beers from, these Belgian-style beers in Jersey, they're really, really strict on beer dating, to the point where they actually deeply discount a lot of beers that normally age quite well. Let's just wrap it up and see if there's any. Yeah, I don't see any kind of. I don't see any kind of sediment ring on this, little merc ring. There's something a little bit in there, so it's going to have a year or 2 on it. But yeah, a little bit of soft oxidation. Outside of that, it is really malt forward / Belgian candied sugar. So it is all the parts of a slightly lighter bodied, slightly lighter malted is probably a better way to put it, kind of Belgian quad for me. That rich candied fruits coming off a little bit lighter on the malty end of things. Not much as even as far as an aged kind of hoppiness. It is all this big, rich fruitiness. I had fruitcake that I couldn't remember during the Omegang review. It's such an easy word to remember, but I couldn't think of the word fruitcake. it very much is that, with this kind of just barely touching a little bit of it spilled across the edge, and I'm touching it and super ultra sticky. So it has this kind of nice big rich fruity phenolic Belgian candied sugar. That beet sugar is coming through very prominent with this nice just richness is the word I'm looking for. So even that little bit of oxidation that I got on the nose is kind of blowing off a little bit. It actually adds a little bit to the whole experience here. I think it comes off as a very pretty beer. Let's dive in. Cheers, y'all. Actually has a decent amount of oxidation going on. Way more than I thought it would originally have. And it's weird. It's a weird thing because, while it's aggressive, very, very, very wet booky, very wet paper baggy. It's such a normal sensation or normal experience for Belgian beers for me, is I don't view it as an overt negative. I know it is a negative. I know it's something a lot of people kind of poo-poo on. But when you grow up in the Belgian beer world, more specifically, when you grow up in the Belgian beer world that I grew up in, which is in, the late 90s, early aughts, to where all these beers were years old. There was no way. There's nothing about shelf. Okay, we're gonna rotate these beers out when they get a little bit old. No, it's craft beer was in its infancy when we get these beers into the States. They're here until they're sold, and they sit on the shelf. And that kind of oxidative, papery thing almost comes like an expected flavor profile for a lot of these Belgian beers. Now, I've kind of started to slowly train that out of my palate, I guess you could say, because a lot of these beers tend to be quite a bit fresher. Turnover's greater, and importing is quite a bit quicker now, and all those kind of things. But when I get something like this that has a decent amount of oxidation to it, not in an overtly negative way, the flavor's still there. It still has nice carbonation. It's not like a dead beer. Something a little romantic about it. So if you kind of take that, push it off to the side, this is a Belgian quad. It is. It's very much. It's a slightly thinner version of what I would say is a kind of a spot on tea kind of Belgian quad. I know they do their 9,000 quadruple. This is very much kind of Belgian quad for me, because what it does give you is this creamy, lush kind of. You can even see it. This kind of pillowy kind of mouthfeel to it. Very much malt forward. 3 times as more malts than a lager, apparently. And it has this kind of almost slightly burnt brown sugar characteristic. I think it's a combination of the way the malts come off and that Belgian candy sugar that they use in it. And a decent amount of bittering. That's the one thing I didn't even kind of talk about now. Didn't get any kind of precursor to that actually on the nose, but when you actually drink it, every subsequent sip you take, you get this wash of this kind of bittering component that is much more aggressive than what you typically expect from a European-born kind of Belgian dark triple, Belgian quad. But I think it works here because the beer is sweet. So it's nice to have that counterbalance off. When you combine that malt sweetiness with that Belgian candied sugar, you need that bitterness to add that kind of balance to it, and it really does kind of work. Now, when you throw that oxidative thing on there that I was talking about previously, and combine it with the way the yeast comes off, it finishes very, very dry. So you're talking about a beer that starts and plays through the beginning, middle, and starting to get towards the end, relatively very sweet, and finishes not squeaky clean, but pretty damn dry. It's a fun roller coaster to go on, because rarely do you get that kind of that oxidative to sweet down to this kind of, okay, it's drying, bittering, and we're drying out with that kind of the way the hops finish, the way the yeast finishes, and the way that kind of the oxidative state of the beer kind of works. Finishes really, really decently dry. I think it's a fun beer. Now, being a week and a half, 2 weeks removed from doing that Omegang, 3 Philosophers, and thinking about it up against that beer. I know it's a little bit unfair of a fight because that's, it's a quad with Creek. This is a dark triple with a bit of time on it. I prefer the Ommegang, to be perfectly honest with you. Something about it kind of tickles me pink, but they're very, very fun beers, and it's a good journey to go on. Especially for me, kind of dipping back into these beers and experiencing them for the first time again. Being so separated from them and not doing them for so long. It's a fun experience, and this beer is really, really good. I bought a 4-pack of this. I'll be diving back into these, personally over the next month or two. See how it goes, and man, do I want that smoke really bad. Smoked, technically. It's called Gulden Draak Smoked. But I can't wait to dive into that, see how that plays. But it's a very, very fun beer. It's always been a little bit more, the best way I could put it, and how Gulden Draak has always kind of come off to me, is, candy's fun. And as a kid, this is the adult sweet I'm going to be talking about here. As a kid, when I was younger, in my early teens, prepubescent years, or teens or whatever, you like the Crunch Bar, you like the Reese's Pieces, you like all those kind of things. And, one day you eat your parents' candy bar. Now, I'm a parent, and I still like Reese's, but my mom loves Score Bars. Score Bars is basically like hard taffy inside of a darker chocolate. So it's a little bit more kind of treacly, a little bit more kind of like spicy molassesy, like a little bit more adulty. And while I was a kid, I just wanted sugar, I'd eat it, but there was something less appealing to it to me, based off of the other things that I ate. I'm like, give me a whatchamacallit bar. I don't want that Score Bar. This is more Score Bar than, Reese's. The Ommegang isn't Reese's. It's a little less than Score Bar, but this is very much an adulty kind of beer. Very much a dessert beer for the old guard of the beer world, where you drink this and you're like, this is the very decadent, very pastry beer before pastry beers actually existed. And that's how this kind of comes off to me. And that's a very adulty, very grown-up version of dessert. In a good way. In a very good way. Not in a marshmallowy kind of lactose, vanilla beanie kind of insane kind of way. And that's where I think this lies. That's kind of, if I'm going to sit here and kind of break down, if I'm going to try to think about, that Ommegang I drank versus this, and, that Ommegang is a little bit more of a drinking Belgian beer, whereas this is, I think, is a little bit more contemplative, a little bit more foodie, desserty beer, that is more of a sipping beer based on the moment, as opposed to, I want a Belgian quad with some fun characteristics. That would be that other beer. So there you go. Talk about it. Price and availability on this thing. I think you can get pretty much Gulden Draak and Van Steenberg beers whenever you want, except for the smoked, apparently. Their price point is pretty decent. It's not that I find these in every bottle shop, but if I want to find this beer, I can find it. You usually get it $20 to $25 a 4-pack, relatively easily. And man, Mount Rushmore, Belgian beers, no, it's never been for me. Sometimes it's eating towards the top, sometimes it's fluttering in the middle, but it's always in the conversation, always a tasty beer. And if you're like, well, you like this, if you like Belgian quads, Belgian triples, you want somewhere in between. If you want an adulty version of what a dessert beer would be, that's what this is to a T. So let's talk about the brewery itself. Have you had a bunch of their beers? Have you had this beer? Have you had it in the past? Have you had it recently? All that fun stuff. That's the conversation we want to have. All that fun stuff down there. So there you go. Review in the books. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully you're enjoying a little bit of beer from beers past. Hopefully see you next time. Cheers, y'all.